Well, thanks everybody for being here this morning. Our first speaker of the morning, her name is Corryn, and she came to the program from doing her undergraduate work on Oahu. She early on decided that she wanted to go have an embedded relationship experience with informal science education. And I think you're going to be really wowed by what she has to share and what she was able to accomplish in her time with ʻImiloa. I know that they greatly appreciated her and all the work that she did, and I'm really excited for you to. So, Corinne, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Lisa, for that intro. All right, and I hope you guys can hear me well enough. Sorry I can't be there in person, but glad I can do this over Zoom. So, aloha and welcome. My name is Corryn Haynes, and today I will be talking to you about my internship experience. My presentation is about increasing opportunities to engage with place-based science education on Hawaiʻi Island. My mentor for this work was Anya Tagawa, the education manager at ʻImiloa Astronomy Center, and my advisor was Lisa Canale, the coordinator for TCBES Master's Program at Hilo. And all of this beautiful clip art that you guys will see in my presentation comes from Kalumaika. Any photos will have a written photo credit, and if it doesn't, that just means myself or someone from ʻImiloa took the photo. So let's get started. All right, so I conducted my professional internship with ʻImiloa Astronomy Center. ʻImiloa is located on Hilo campus, and it's a community outreach and multi-service organization. Their mission is to honor Mauna Kea by sharing Hawaiian culture and science to inspire exploration. And ʻImiloa provides many services. Within ʻImiloa, there's an exhibit hall space that educates on topics from sea to sky, including astronomy, wayfinding, native forests, and right now there's even a temporary exhibit focusing on Lavaia. They have a planetarium where guests can come watch different shows or come hear talks from professionals who are experts in their field. And ʻImiloa also hosts field trips and educational outreach. And there's also an abundance of native landscaping, as you can see, around ʻImiloa that showcases endemic, indigenous, and canoe plants of Hawaiʻi Island. And they also host community events and educational programming during school intersessions. And the content of these events and programming are rooted in place-based education. And place-based education is achieved by educating students through local context with emphasis on the local community, culture, and environment. And place-based education aims to create personal connections between students and the subject matter, and it helps to foster cultural and environmental consciousness. And there is a demand for place-based education in Hawaii schools, but unfortunately, there are many barriers that teachers face, such as a lack of funding, lack of time, and appropriate training. And these factors make it difficult for teachers to bring this content into their classrooms. However, informal education settings such as ʻImiloa, they're able to provide educational resources and experiences that are not constrained in content like formal schools can be. And this makes informal education settings ideal to help bridge this gap for students, teachers, and the community to engage in learning that connects them to place. So my work with ʻImiloa spanned three main focus areas that increased opportunities for place-based science engagement with different audiences. The first was research and funding, which focused on Hawaiʻi Island teacher needs. The second was curriculum writing and teaching, which focused on students in grades kindergarten through fifth. And the third was community engagement, which focused on educational outreach and community events with the public. And I'll take you through each of these project focus areas and talk to you about the process and outcomes for each. And I will begin by diving into the research and funding focus area. So ʻImiloa has a variety of place-based educational materials such as worksheets, crafts, dioramas, board games, and other activities that they've built out over the years. And you can see here a list of topics that their materials cover. And when I came on board, Anya expressed that ʻImiloa is trying to figure out more ways that they can make this material more accessible to elementary school teachers. There was questions about what content should be shared, how can they format it, and more specifically, what's the best way to do this for teachers? So I figured the best way to guide our decisions would be to first ask Hawaiʻi Island teachers what their needs and interests are regarding place-based science educational materials. So I decided I would create an online survey to send to teachers. And I was and still am very new to the world of education. So I knew before I wrote a survey, I first needed to speak with teachers to get a baseline understanding of how they felt about place-based education in their schools. I was fortunate to be able to help out with this art, science, and ecological change workshop for K through 12 educators last year that was hosted by ʻImiloa. And this workshop was filled with passionate educators that had a desire for place-based science education in their classroom. And I was able to connect one-on-one with a few of them and even went on to interview them about this topic for my social science research methods class. And through those connections and hearing their stories, I was able to gain insight into what challenges they faced, and this helped me further develop my survey. So I then collaborated with staff at ʻImiloa to finalize the teacher survey questions, but we wanted to get an idea of the types of topics that teachers were interested in teaching from a place-based perspective, what types of resources would be most helpful, do they need lesson plans to be aligned to the next generation science standards, what is their budget for this material, and what barriers do they face. So once the survey was created, with help from Lisa Canale, I sent the survey to be approved by the UH Institutional Review Board. And with help from Colby McNaughton, an instructor with the School of Education at UH Hilo, I was able to send my survey to 65 Hawaiʻi Island elementary school principals who were then asked to distribute the survey to their teachers. And we had a total of 20 teachers respond to the survey. And these responses provided us with great insight into teacher needs and interests. And while the specific survey results can be used by ʻImiloa in the future to help guide their decisions with educational material formatting, I ended up focusing on the results that demonstrated what the barriers are that teachers are facing regarding implementing this material into their classrooms. We found that a majority of teachers had no budget for these types of materials. They lacked resources such as materials and supplies, and they lacked professional development to support Hawaiʻi place-based knowledge. So since ʻImiloa is a space that has the resources to support Hawaiʻi place-based knowledge, I used these survey results to apply for a grant that will enable ʻImiloa to host a series of professional development workshops for Hawaiʻi Island teachers. And with help from Lisa Hadway Spain, the Deputy Director of ʻImiloa, I was able to apply for this Hawaiʻi Community Foundation grant, and we got it. So now ʻImiloa has a small grant to host a series of professional development workshops for Hawaiʻi Island teachers to help foster their place-based knowledge. And I had two main takeaways from this research and funding focus area. The first is the purpose of research. I learned that research is not something you do for yourself, it's something you do for the community. And especially as someone who is not from this space, take the time to get to know the community and ask, what are your needs and how can I help? And the second is the power in partnerships. My eyes were open to how many gaps in support there are for teachers. And that's why it's so important that informal education settings such as ʻImiloa help teachers to feel supported by providing not only students an opportunity to learn, but also opportunities for teachers themselves. Because when teachers are supported, then keiki are supported. And now I'll be talking about my time writing curriculum and teaching for ʻImiloa Halau Lamaku enrichment program for keiki in grades K through 5. And I know there's a lot going on here, but I'll break it down. So in every school intersession, spring break, summer break, and fall break, ʻImiloa hosts an enrichment program for students in K through 5 called Halau Lamaku. Each week is dedicated to a specific place-based theme. And as you can see here, I've listed each week's theme we had in 2025. And as a side note, I do know that dinosaurs aren't exactly place-based, but ʻImiloa had a great dinosaur exhibit at the time, and we did tie it to place as much as possible. So I wrote some of the curriculum for Dinosaur Week, and I wrote all of the curriculum for the Song of the Kahuli Week, and I wrote some of the curriculum for the Local Ia Week. I also taught for 5 weeks of Halal Lamaku. I was able to start off as an assistant teacher in the spring, and then in summer, I was a lead teacher for 4 weeks. And then for the last 2 weeks of summer, I was working behind the scenes, writing curriculum for the fall Local Ia camp. And so during Halal Lamaku, students spend all day at ʻImiloa. They get dropped off at 8 a.m. and they get picked up at 3 p.m. So they get a chance to explore the exhibit hall, watch a movie in the planetarium, and play outside. And in addition to all of that, they do have daily curriculum activities. So as far as curriculum goes, each day consists of Hana no Eau, which is a week-long art project, Ha'awina, which is a mini lesson, and Ha'awina Nui, which is a main curriculum unit, which is about an hour long with activities. And so now I'll go through all of these daily curriculum lessons that I created for the week for Song of the Kahuli. And for those who may be unfamiliar, kahuli are native land snails here in Hawaii with great cultural and ecological significance. And unfortunately, a majority of them have gone extinct or are facing extinction. So I wanted to be intentional with my approach to creating all of the curriculum. For each type of curriculum, I had a different goal. And my goal for Hana no Eau, which is the week-long art project where we dedicate 30 minutes a day, was for students to create a variety of different kahuli that showcase their diversity. So each day, students were shown different kahuli species with their scientific name, and they also learned that they live on the ground and on native plants such as ohia trees. Here's some examples of students with their work. They were given art supplies such as felt for the ohia leaves, pipe cleaners to make lehua flowers, clay to sculpt the kahuli, paint to make them whatever color or pattern they wanted, and I even gave them some of that Mod Podge gloss so that the kahuli were nice and shiny. And they worked on this project for a whole week, and once they were done, we ended with a show and tell so everyone got to walk around and see each other's work. So now moving on to the Ha'awina lessons, which are the mini lessons. Each day we had a different Ha'awina lesson, but my goal for all of them was to focus on the cultural significance of the kahuli. So for the first day, I did a read aloud of the book Kili and the Singing Tree Snails. And for those who may be unfamiliar, kahuli are often described as the singing tree snails in many mo'olelo and mele. And I'll give you a sense of what this book is about with the opening line. This story takes place in Hawaii long ago, at a time when a king's home had not yet fallen down and the snails had not yet disappeared from the land. So in the book, young Kili follows a pulelehua into the mountains and becomes lost, but with the help and guidance of the singing tree snails, he finds his way back to his ohana. And the book highlights the importance of listening to the forest, and it instills teachings of aloha aina. And so for the second day of Ha'awina, I wanted to focus on the alelo of a lullaby that the kahuli sang to Kili in the book. I'm not going to sing it for you, but the mele goes, kahuli aku, kahuli mai, kahuli le'ula, le akolea, kolea kolea, ki'i ikawai, vai akolea, vai akolea, which the book translates to mean, turn little tree shell, turn back again. Here is a lei, the lei of the akolea. Little bird, go down to the stream, bring the sweet nectar of the akolea. This mele is on YouTube, so I played it in the classroom while we worked on the activity, so the students had a chance to hear it. I had printed out the lines of the mele, so they were able to cut out each line and glue it in their booklet, and then they drew what each line meant or represented. And here's some examples that you guys can see. And so even if they didn't understand the olelo of the mele, they could still listen to the mele and look at their illustration and connect to it. For the third day of Ha'awina, I wanted to focus on the idea of listening to the forest, just like our kahuli have taught us. So we went outside and we practiced our kilo. I created a kilo worksheet and it had 4 different sections, each with a kahuli asking a question. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel? We took our students outside, wandered through the native gardens at ʻImiloa, and spent some time in silence so that all the students had a chance to kilo and fill out their worksheets. And then for the last Ha'awina, I wanted to celebrate that kahuli are said to sing, and they are also known as jewels of the forest due to their colorful and shiny appearance. So, of course, we had to make some bedazzled kahuli wind chimes using popsicle sticks, cardboard, sticky gemstones, and chimes. Students were encouraged to take them home and hang them up, maybe even on a tree in their yard, and be reminded of the singing kahuli that are the jewels of the forest. And so now moving on to the Ha'awina Nui lessons, which are the main lesson portions of the day. My goal for Ha'awina Nui was to introduce the idea of kahuli conservation. I explained what conservation means and what it means to be a conservationist. I said that in order to be a kahuli conservationist, you have to ask some very important questions. And the first question you have to ask is, who are kahuli? So we spent the first day getting to know who they are and what they do. And I made this worksheet for the first half of the lesson. On the right, I made a kahuli anatomy diagram with a word bank of the kahuli anatomy that we all filled out together. And then each student got to color it in however they liked. And then on the left side, I created this Mad Lib style fill in the blank so that students could practice describing each body part with their own creativity while learning its function. So for example, the first one could say, at night, I move with my slimy foot to climb over leaves in search of food. And then for the second half of this lesson, we had a bit of fun and made some slime because you can't teach a whole week about snails and not make slime. So, and we did learn that kahuli have unique pheromones in their slime trails that other kahuli can sense with their tentacles. So students got to make their own slimes unique to themselves using different colors and glitter if they wanted to. And so now that students learned a bit about who kahuli are, we focused on the next question that a kahuli conservationist needs to ask. What do kahuli need? So this lesson was all about their habitat and diet. And what better way to learn this than by playing bingo? So I created about 10 different varieties of these bingo cards. And as the teacher, I would randomly draw a piece of paper that had the definition, description, or some type of hint of a word that students had to guess. So I would read the hint and students would look at their bingo cards and guess. So for example, if I said, this is the time of day that kahuli feed, their correct answer would be nighttime. And so students with the nighttime square could be able to mark it. So we played so many rounds of this that by the end, all of the students knew all of the answers very quickly. So it was a great way to sneak in, to have fun and sneak in a lot of learning. And for the second half of this lesson, we did a bit of arts and crafts. So using a variety of paper types, scissors, glue, each student used the words on their bingo card to help guide them in creating their own kahuli habitat. So now on to day 3. So now that students have learned who kahuli are and what they need, the next question to ask as a conservationist is, what challenges do they face? So I made a board game called the Kahuli Climb Against the Odds. So this board game highlights all of the main threats that kahuli face, such as habitat loss, invasive predators, and climate change. And the goal is for your kahuli to avoid the threats and make its way to the safety of the ohia lehua. And we spent the lesson playing the game, and students did really like it. If they landed on a space with a graphic other than a leaf, they had to read what the graphic meant, and through this, they were able to learn by playing. For example, if you landed on the rosy wolf snail, it read, the rosy wolf snail is an introduced predatory snail that feeds on kahuli. This predator caught you. Move back 3 spaces. But if you happen to land on fungi, which is something that kahuli eat, you get a super boost of energy and you get to advance 2 spaces. And if you were to land on a snail trail, it reads, your kahuli caught the scent of a shortcut from a fellow kahuli. Follow the snail trail to advance. And I think this was definitely the most fun I had in creating an activity. And now that students know who kahuli are, what they need, what challenges they face, our next and final question is, how can we help them? So to do this, we spent the first half of our lesson doing a virtual field trip with the Snail Extinction Prevention Program. And this was a great way for students to see all the ways that people are trying to save and protect kahuli. And this field trip shows what is entailed in the captive rearing of kahuli and where they get released back into the forest. And we also went over the Kahuli Code of Conduct so that even if you are not able to work in a lab to help raise them, your actions and how you conduct yourself every day still matter. And so following this, for the second half of the lesson, students had a chance to practice their kahuli rearing skills. They made kahuli out of clay and pasta shells and put them in little paper petri dishes. They then had to take notes on all of their information to practice being good conservation scientists in the lab. For example, the student on the left had a data sheet that said that their petri dish had 4 kahuli. They're all from the island of Hawaii. They're foraging on ohia leaves. There's 2 babies and 2 adults. They're green in color, and their release date back into their natural environment is 2035. So this gave them some data recording practice while also getting to use their imagination. So this concludes the Kahuli week that I created, and next I'd like to show you the other curriculum lessons that I had a chance to create for the fall 2025 Loko Ia Halau Lamaku program. So this craft was for part of a lesson where students were learning about the parts of the Loko Ia and how they are engineered. So they got to build a kuapa, which is a rock wall, and the makaha gate using air-dry clay, cardboard, wooden sticks, and markers. This next activity was a flip book, so students could become familiar with the different types of Loko Ia. Students cut out each type, colored them in, and assembled them into a flip book so that they could have an illustration on one side and then a written description on the other side of each type of Loko Ia. For this activity, we focused on the role of limu in the Loko Ia. So I created a colorable diagram with different descriptions and processes that occur around and within a Loko Ia that impact limu. So teachers would help explain each part while students cut out and stuck each rectangle to where it belonged in the picture. And by going over it, hopefully students were able to make a connection to limu that maybe they hadn't before, such as limu needs sunlight to help them grow. And then I also had a lot of fun in creating this game. This again focused on limu, and it is a card matching game. So you can see there's 4 color-coded categories of cards, which are limu need, limu do not like, limu can be, and limu provide. So I won't go through all the details of how it's played, but essentially it's a matching game played with a friend, and the goal is to earn the most points to become the kia'i loko, which is the caretaker of the fish pond, with the healthiest loko ia. It is adaptable, so students in higher grade levels can play it with the point system, while students in lower grade levels can use it to play a simple matching game. And then this activity was inspired by Pokemon cards. So in this lesson, students were learning about common fish found in a Loko Ia. So I made these 6 cards for students to color and fill in some data for. And each card has the Hawaiian name and common name of the fish printed. And then students were able to use their imagination to fill out data such as length, weight, color, and life stage of the fish. And then lastly, these are some species spotlight watercolors that I had made that included the Hawaiian name, scientific name, and what each niche is that it has in the Loko Ia, as well as a fun fact. So Halal was my first experience teaching. I was so glad that I was able to be an assistant teacher during the spring program because it gave me a lot of insight into what these camps look like, how students at different grade levels learn and behave and interact with one another. And I felt a lot more confident going into summer because I knew what to expect. And I felt like it made me a better curriculum writer because once you have experience as a teacher, then you know what teachers need in order for lessons to run smoothly and be engaging and to ultimately be successful. And so I had 3 main takeaways from my curriculum and teaching focus area. The first is to know your audience. I found that while K through 5 may sound like one audience, it is not. Kindergartners and fifth graders are very different from one another, and so it's important to keep this in mind when creating curriculum at Halal especially, where you have to cater to all of them with the same lesson. So if you make the lesson too challenging for a kindergartner, then they might not be able to do it successfully on their own. And now the teacher in a room of 20 kindergartners is having to help every single one of them, which is not great. And on the other hand, if you don't make it challenging or intriguing enough for a fifth grader, then you risk them losing interest and engagement with the content. So it's a good challenge for me to try and find that sweet spot. And I think the key was to engage students through play and games. The second is that teachers are superheroes. I have never been so tired than after my 4 weeks of teaching this past summer, which sounds really sad, but it takes a lot to not only teach content in a way that students are engaged and interested, but also in managing behavior, which I learned is like 95% of the job. So go hug a teacher if you know one. They're doing awesome. And my last takeaway is that I definitely found a new interest of mine. I really enjoyed creating games and coming up with activities for curriculum lessons. I got to learn how to use Adobe Illustrator and InDesign, and I found it so incredibly fun to identify what it is I want a student to learn and then have that full freedom in being creative and coming up with a way to deliver that message. And so now, lastly, I will talk about my last project focus area, which was community engagement. So my objective for the community engagement focus area was to participate in education outreach events on behalf of ʻImiloa, which ended up being the Find Your Wild event at Hakalau and the Kekani Ne Kapuhu Conservation Festival in Waimea, and to also take the lead in putting on ʻImiloa's Halloween event, the Carnival of Bugs. So at the Hakalau Find Your Wild event, which had about 500 participants, ʻImiloa hosted an outreach booth and we gave out native bird booklets that you can see in the middle picture there. We encouraged participants to try and spot these birds on their walk, and when they came back, they let us know how many of each bird they saw, and we gave them a bird button of their choice. Anya has done an incredible job creating educational materials on diverse place-based subject matter. And it's so fun to see how the public lights up when they come to ʻImiloa's booth to see what we have for them. It was also a great experience meeting new people, sharing resources, and also having the chance to learn from others about this special place. And we also attended the Keikani Ne Kapupu Festival at Kanuokaʻaina in Waimea. And this event was presented by Bishop Museum's Malacology Department. And it was a conservation fest to celebrate land snails and biodiversity. So this really was a full circle moment because the incredible kumu that hosted this festival, Ariel Lindsay Ameliano, was one of the teachers that I had met way back in that art, science, and ecological change workshop and later interviewed before I developed my teacher survey, if you can remember that far back in my talk. And it was because of this connection that she later reached out to me to invite us to host an educational booth at this festival. And the fact that the focus was on native land snails meant that I could bring my Kahuli board game that I had developed, and it made me feel really good to be able to see Keiki enjoy playing the game. And so, as many of you know, the theme of ʻImiloa's Halloween event was Carnival of Bugs. We decided that for this event, we would create educational carnival games for people to play, and each one would focus on an invasive or native bug in Hawaii. The talented Anya created a majority of these games, such as the three that you see in progress on the left. And I facilitated the collaboration between ʻImiloa and my science education class at Hilo to help contribute two of the games, which you can see on the right. So for a majority of us in the science education class, it was our first time doing something like this. Communicating science to children and families in a fast-paced, informal education settings takes a lot of practice. And in the class, we were able to attend informal science nights at elementary schools, and we were able to get a sense of what worked and what didn't. What is it about an activity that grabs Keiki's attention? What keeps families engaged? What is the take-home message we want them to leave with? So with those questions in mind, we intentionally created 2 carnival games. The game in the middle is a plinko game of the Pe'epe'e Makanui, which is a native alpine wolf spider on Mauna Kea. And in this game, the goal was for Keiki to help feed the spider by dropping an insect chip from the top of the plinko board, hoping that it landed in the spider slot. And the game on the right is a Pinau giant dragonfly launch game. And the goal was for Keiki to launch the dragonfly and make it into one of the holes that represented different elevations and habitats that the Pinau lives in. So this collaboration enabled ʻImiloa to get some help, and it enabled students to learn how to communicate science in a fun and engaging way. And then I was also in charge of ensuring that this event had educational outreach booths that were aligned to our theme of bugs. We had incredible participation from the community, and we were able to have Liko Napilina, Big Island Invasive Species Committee, Alala Biodiversity Lab, Hawaiʻi Ant Lab, and even an entomology class from Hilo, all hosted a booth at this event. And then lastly, I was in charge of securing and coordinating volunteers and staff, as well as assigning them all to their duties for this event. We had 36 volunteers and 23 staff members that all helped make this event possible. And I had never done anything like this before, so I am very grateful I had the opportunity to learn the organization and the logistics that go on behind the scenes of an event like this. And I did enjoy the project management side of things. We ended up selling over 1,200 tickets, and this ended up being a great event that brought people from all over the community together to have some Halloween fun and learn a bit about Hawaii's native and invasive insects. And so I had 2 main takeaways from the community engagement focus area. The first is the importance of intentional materials. From participating in outreach events, I learned that people only give you so much of their attention. And if it's only going to be at most a few seconds, what do you want them to take with them? Is it a message? Is it a concept, a flyer, an experience? Knowing your audience or knowing your goal and how you plan to achieve it will help make your educational materials really intentional and effective. And the second takeaway is that collaboration is key to connecting the community. The more you include other people and invest in other people's strengths and expertise, the richer the experience for everyone. When you collaborate on something, you help to set up this domino effect of potential connections to people and place that otherwise may not exist if you go it alone. And so with that, that concludes my talk for today. I want to express my acknowledgement and deep appreciation for everyone who helped to make this work possible. My advisor, Lisa, my mentor, Anya, ʻImiloa staff, Hawaiʻi Island educators, my science education class and instructors, and my fellow TCBES cohort. Mahalo.
Okay, we're gonna do this better. All right, well, I'd like to open the floor to a question or two. Does anybody have a question for Corryn?
Oops.
Question is, you had mentioned that you hadn't started in education. Is now education the direction you want to go in?
Yes, I don't know that I necessarily want to be a teacher in a formal school, but I love creating educational content. So I definitely want to pursue that in some capacity.
And Zoom people, if there's any questions for the audience on Zoom, go ahead and either put it in the chat or unmute yourself. With any other questions from our audience, our live audience? Oh, yes. Do you want to come up here and ask? Okay.
Very much for the presentation. My question has to do with the survey that you sent out to the teachers and in terms of the barriers that were identified And I was just curious if any of them did indicate that a barrier for them to integrate this sort of place-based learning into their teaching had to do with, existing responsibilities to fulfill subject matter or whatnot, right? So was it an issue that they wanted to but didn't have space at all? Did anyone bring that up, that they had too many other responsibilities? This was one. That was my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Definitely. And it varied. Within our survey, we asked the teachers, what grade are you teaching and how many hours per week are you able to teach science or science, math, the STEAM. And so with that, there was a variety of results, but I will say as far as the specific question about barriers that they faced, it wasn't a free response survey question. We had laid out multiple options that they could choose from. Um, and that might have been a good one to ask if that was a barrier. But I just know overall from also speaking to teachers candidly, they really don't have a lot of time to focus on it, especially if they aren't being, at certain grade levels, the kids aren't being tested on these subjects. And so they're not going to teach them in their grade level, even though that they would want to. I hope that answered your question a little bit.